Hey, Pat McCardle back for another episode of Shop Talk. Today we're mixing it up a little. We're heading outside. We're going to do some demonstrations head to head here. So we got the all new RZR XP. We're comparing that against the KRX 4-seater from Kawasaki along with the Honda Talon. So we're going to go through some exterior stuff, some interior stuff, and do some demonstrations and head to heads as we go. All right, we're starting with the interiors, and I'm sitting in the all-new Polaris RZR XP here. So if you look, beautifully comfortable seats on this thing. All new one-piece shells. They really hug you in, bolster you, and they don't move around, so you don't get any of that kind of motion side to side. From a steering wheel position perspective, we got a nice small steering wheel. It's laid back so that I can keep my shoulders pinned into the seat. You can see I'm not having to like stretch my body out, so from an ergonomics perspective, great package on the RZR XP. As we move over, we got a key switch here. We've got off, accessory, on, and start. So 4 positions. So if you want to listen to the radio, you can leave that in accessory. It keeps your display powered up along with your audio, but turns lots of other things off so you don't drain your battery quite as fast. Simple switches here. Headlights, off, low, high. That's pretty standard amongst all these. 2-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. Shifter is a nice short throw. It's right down where your arm can reach it. So whether you're in park or coming all the way back to high, super easy to make those shifts. You don't have to worry about slotting through a bunch of gates. From a floor perspective, my feet have different places they can go. So obviously my right foot's going to be running throttle and brake here, but I've got room for my dead pedal on my left foot, or I can lay it down so I can kind of splay my knee open so I can get some nice different ways to ride. And I've got a smooth interior door surface here, so I don't have to worry about my knee digging in on anything. And the other nice thing, when I want to shut this, I got a spot for my hand. So even if I get mud packed up on the outside of my door, I don't have to worry about grabbing that door and getting my hands and gloves all dirty. Now, next thing to show off here is we've actually got 4-point harnesses. So cool thing here, you know, for some people that end up with these machines, might be a little bigger, a little smaller. I've got these adjusted kind of all the way out, and you can see just how big these are if I was a much bigger guy. But pretty simple to operate, right? You want to grab the straps on your hips, get those tightened up first. Make sure you got the clip set up across your chest for the shoulder straps. And then once you got the hips set, you grab the straps for each shoulder, pull those down, and you can get that 4-point set up and ready to go for you. So it makes it really nice and easy to get that thing adjusted in. And once you've got it set up once, when you get out, you can get back in. You don't have to readjust it every time. Once it's set for you, you're ready to go. The other nice thing is, even strapped in, you can see here that I can grab my steering wheel, I can reach the key, I can reach the switches all the way across the dash, including the accessories and the shifter. So the ergonomics and reach posture on this are great. The other thing that's awesome on this model is storage. So we've got glove boxes in front of the driver and the passenger, and we've also got another one down in front of the passenger side that gives you a spacious amount, so you get tons of extra storage here. You've even got a small cubby here and spot for your drinks down in the middle. So jumping in on the passenger side, you got a simple lever here on the bottom that you flip down, and you've got infinite adjustability on this grab handle. So you can put it wherever you want it to be able to keep your shoulders buried in the seat and have something firm to hang on to. The other nice thing that I think you guys can see is that you got a built-in lug wrench on the end of this. So if you pop that pin out, you can actually take this bar off and use it to crack your lug nuts free and get them tightened back up. So pretty sweet feature built into the grab handle on this one. All right, now let's move back to the back. This is one area that people often wonder about on the RZR XP, because it doesn't look gigantic back here. And I'm about, I don't know, 6'1", 235, 240. And when I jump in, you know, I fit just fine. Like, there's plenty of room in the back seat. The seat's nicely contoured, so my knees have something to ride against, my legs. I got spots that I can grab onto grab handles here, so I feel really secure. And I'm up just a little bit from the front seat, so I got nice viewing angles so I can watch what's coming down the trail. So overall, again, front driver's seat, passenger seat, even the rear is plenty of room for the whole family. All right, so the other thing we need to talk about on the inside of this RZR XP is all the technology that we've added for this new model. So starting off with Ride Command, you know, we've got a full episode on this, so that'll take you in depth. But we've got, you know, the gauges, the maps and navigation, phone pairing, we've got audio. Speaking of audio, we got a nice Rockford sound system, so you can see we've got speakers up front for the front driver and passenger. And we've got rear speakers in the back of this 4-seater for the folks in the back. And you can fade and balance those so you can get that sound really tailored how you like it. As you look on the electronic side, we've got a couple cool charge ports. So you got your standard 12-volt plug here. So think of that as like a cigar outlet size. So great for hooking up, you know, your tire pump or other trail side things that you're going to need for that size plug. The other one we get asked about a lot is this one right down by your knee here. And this is actually meant for a trickle charger. So when you're storing your vehicle or off season between rides, you can plug right in there. It's connected to the battery, and that'll keep that battery topped off when you put your charger there. Scrolling down, the other thing you'll see in the door here is we've got a really nice door seal that's kind of new for the RZR XP here. So that seals up, keeps some of that mud and debris off the tire from coming back into you. So you know, like older models, you might have gotten a bit dirty. This one keeps you pretty clean. It's really nice in that regard. We're sitting in the ultimate trim today, so this has kind of got all the bells and whistles. We do offer a sport and a premium as well. So the sport's a little more basic. You get kind of a standard gauge. The premium upgrades you to like a Rockford head unit instead of the one you see here. But on both of those, we've got pre-wired up. So if you want to add ride command or audio down the road, you can upgrade very easily. We've also got a pulse bar across all these models for really simple plug and play integration of electrical accessories. All right, next up, let's jump into the Honda Talon and check out the inside of this one. So first thing we got to do is pop this net clip down, reach inside, find the door handle. It does swing nicely open, so you can get in and out pretty easy on this one. But pretty basic interior overall from you know, a layout perspective and a display. So standard tilt on the column. You got a decent sized steering wheel here. You got paddles behind the shifter because it's got a different style of transmission. It's got gates, you know, through the shifter, so it takes you a little bit maybe to get used to if you're not used to that. As you look around the interior, super basic lights for the shock settings right behind the steering wheel here, and a really basic LCD gauge in the middle. So kind of old school tech from an instrumentation point of view on the Talon. From a switches perspective, you know, we got headlights, all-wheel drive. Those are pretty well the same across some of these models. Similar to the RZR, we've got a suspension switch here. And then we've got kind of some transmission and hill hold and launch stuff that's a little unique to the Talon. So tech's a little bit different on the way some of this stuff works. We'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about like how this thing actually rides and some of the handling characteristics it's got. One of the things I don't love so much about the interior of the Talon is the cable operated throttle. So it's a little stiffer pedal feel. So I tend to get a little more leg and ankle fatigue on this than I do on a RZR. So when you're thinking about storage on the interior of the Talon, we've got a little cubby here that you can maybe throw a, I don't know, spare set of gloves or something you don't really care about popping out. And we've got one glove box over here on the side. So not a huge amount of storage and, you know, maybe a tiny little cubby here in the middle. But you don't have the nice behind the driver and passenger seat upper storage bins that you can reach while you're in the seat here. As we look here at the door, clearly you can see that there's an opening. It's only got a quarter door, so this is not filled in. So you do tend to get some mud and debris that can come in down at the bottom of the door here. So your leg's going to get a little dirtier when you're riding a Talon than a RZR. Seats decently comfortable. I can reach the steering wheel okay. I do feel a little more, you know, kind of bent back on this one. But it's a, you know, relatively firm seat, easy to drive in that regard. Ride and handling is probably not my favorite, but again, we'll talk about that in a little while when we actually get this thing out on the trail. All right, just jumped into the passenger seat on the Talon. So from the grab handle perspective, you got one lever to flip over, and again, kind of infinite adjustment. Maybe not quite as long as the RZR, but you get a couple inches to be able to move that back and forth. And then lock the lever over, that'll hold it in place. No lug wrench built in on the end of this, so kind of just a standard handle here. You do have some decent spots to put your feet on the dead pedals on the Talon, so that part's okay from the front passenger perspective. All right, so I just jumped into the back seat of the Talon, and as you can see here, I do have enough room to fit. My toes are kind of on a flat floor, so nothing comes up like the RZR to help me plant my balls in my feet when you're riding more aggressively. And one thing I don't love is that the edge of this seat back, although it is plastic, it does have a couple angles that tend to bounce off my leg a little bit. And the steel frame you can see is right here behind it. So you do tend to kind of hit your knees on that once in a while. So it's not always the best if you're a taller person with longer legs in the back of the Talon. It does have stadium seating. So again, I'm sitting up a little higher. I can see out. So that part's good. And the grab handle is kind of, you know, all the way across the bar here. So easy to grab onto to keep your hands off the seat in front of you. All right, back up in the driver's seat to talk about some of the technology and features that the Talon has that are a little bit different than the RZR. So when we look at the shocks, the RZR's got a set of Walker Evans needle shocks on it. The Talon's got a set of Fox live valve shocks with electronic control, so it's kind of basic. There's normal and sport. You got one switch to be able to adjust between those two settings on the left side of the steering wheel here. We've got different styles of transmission. So the Polaris has got a PVT or a rubber belt CVT style setup, so a continuously variable transmission, whereas the Honda's got a dual clutch setup. So it's you know, a discrete ratio gearbox, and when we get it out in the woods, you'll maybe see sometimes, I don't know if we'll be able to catch it on camera, where it gets a little confused if you're driving aggressively. If you're just putting around, it generally works just fine. With that, you also get the ability to have these paddle shifts if you want to play around with those to simulate or, you know, to operate the manual. A lot of people end up just leaving it in automatic mode. It also does give you a launch mode as well, so you can hold the paddles down, push that button, and then get it to accelerate off the line quickly. And then the other big difference is on the front drive of these models. So the RZR's got kind of our standard Polaris on-demand system where you just flip that switch and it locks, engages all four wheels for you. The Honda actually has an open front differential on it with a front axle kind of ABS system, and it's got their four-wheel drive system, they call it. And what they're actually doing is braking one wheel that loses traction to try and transfer the power to the other side. And we've got a demonstration we'll get to in a while that kind of shows some of the downfalls of that system, especially on low traction surfaces. But there's a switch for two-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, and then the hill hold is all done off that system as well. From an audio perspective, there is no radio, no audio in the Talon. And from a gauges and displays perspective, super basic, kind of old school LCD and indicator technology here. Now, last but not least, we're jumping into the Kawasaki KRX. We got a door handle on the outside. These do get packed up with mud a bit at times, so there is also one on the inside you can grab. But you do have to grab onto the door to get this one shut, so your hands do get a little dirty at times when you're running in the mud in the Kawi. Simple tilt steering wheel here, so that part's pretty easy. You got a pretty basic radio with this high phonics unit in the KRX. Speakers are built into the doors. Amp or the sub is in the back, eats up some of the storage space, so that's not maybe ideal. But the sound quality's, you know, okay. It's just not the easiest thing to use, I'll say. From a gauges and perspective, we do have a little bit, you know, newer technology on the KRX compared to the Talon. I think, but still a step behind the RZR in that regard. So you have a big display right behind the steering wheel that looks pretty good. But from a navigation perspective, there's actually two switches down here in front of the shift handle that you have to be able to use to navigate. So, you know, you got return, kind of up and down buttons, select. So it takes a little bit to learn how to navigate this because it's not a touchscreen like the ride command on the RZR is. Other things that you've got on the interior, there's no park in the transmission here, so there is a parking brake handle on the side. So you get that. But high-low neutral reverse, so a CVT similar to the RZR. This one does have a starting clutch in it, so the Kawasaki is pretty good at low-speed drivability. There is also a switch for a power mode that'll drop that down for rock crawling type situations. From a front drive perspective, technology here is a little bit different. We do have a two-wheel, four-wheel, and then a four-wheel drive lock setting. So kind of when you're trail riding, you might be in four-wheel drive, so open front diff, and then you can lock that out, but your steering does get pretty heavy when you do that. So think of that as a real technical four-lock when you're like in the rock or mud situations. This one does also have an electronic suspension setup. So this one versus the Talon, you actually get three settings. There's a soft, a normal, and a firm. With a simple interface on the dash to be able to use those, so that's not too hard to use. But really catered to low speed operation on the Kawasaki versus the RZR. It's maybe a little more mid to high speed, and the Talon that I'm honestly not exactly sure how those shocks are tuned. So not my favorite riding vehicle of the bunch, but we'll get to that later. You know, other things from a storage perspective, we do have one storage bin up on the top here. This does also have a USB and aux port for the audio. There's a decent sized glove box here on the passenger side, so that storage is okay. Cup holders are pretty small in the front, so you can get like a standard water bottle or a soda can in there, but not much that's bigger. From an ergo perspective, the seat, you do have the ability to slide these back and forth. This one's got, you know, a couple miles on it, so it gets a little crusty, but, you know, overall not too bad. But if you get the seat too far back, the steering wheel gets a little far away, so I can't actually slide this as far back as I want my legs to be, or I end up being farther away from the steering wheel than I want. So the ergonomics of the Kawasaki, the legroom is a little short compared to the other models, but when you get all the way back to by the legroom, then the steering wheel is a little further away than I like it to be personally. So I end up choking up on the seat to be able to get a good steering posture, and then my legs get bent up a little more in this one. But overall, it does have enough room. It's just you'll have to play around with it to adjust it to your liking. All right, just got into the front passenger seat on the KRX. And first thing you notice here is the grab handle. There's a little knob on the bottom you pull down, and you've got discrete positions. So it's not quite infinitely adjustable like the other two models. And if we pull that out, you can see you've got 5 holes to be able to adjust that grab bar. So that's a little different on this one. One of the other things that you guys might not be able to easily see is that the dead pedals are actually offset. So my right leg is a little closer to me than I want it. Left leg is nice and stretched out, so I can put both my feet right next to one another. So that part is nice. But if you want your feet spread apart, that right leg is going to be up into that wheel well area. One of the other cool things on this is, I don't know if you can see it, I'll try and get my legs out of the way, but there is a built-in cup holder on the door for the passenger here. So that is a nice feature on the Kawasaki that isn't on the other models as well. So other than that, you know, pretty standard front seat. These seats do move around a little bit in the KRX, and if you don't have people sitting, you may hear that when you're out on the trail as well. So they're not quite as stable as the other two units. RZR and the Talon are a little bit better than the Kawasaki for, I'll say, the stability of the seat mounted if you don't have someone sitting in it. All right, let's jump into the back of the KRX next. So pretty easy to get in this one. You know, I don't have the passenger seat all the way back, but even if I did, there's plenty of room here. If that seat were 2 more inches back, you know, my knee would be in the side, but it's pretty comfortable in the back of these KRX seats. And again, my feet, you know, kind of jam into the floor. I can't go any further forward than they are right now. But overall, plenty of room for a full-size adult in the back of the KRX. These seats are flat, so you can see I'm staring right at the back of the seat rest in front of me. So it's a little harder to see kind of where we're going down the trail versus the RZR or the Talon with the flat seating in the KRX versus the stadium seating in the other two. All right, so we're going to be checking out the sight lines over the hood on each of these 3 vehicles. So we got a line of cones set up in the front, and we're going to pull each one up until we can barely see the bottom of the cone right over the kind of the front fender on the driver's side. So we'll do that for the RZR, then the Talon, then the KRX last, and we'll take a look at how far apart from the cone each vehicle is. The closest one wins the demonstration. So we're going to drop in low gear. We're in all-wheel drive, headlights how we'd have them. And we're gonna creep up on this cone. I can still see the whole thing, no problem, no problem, no problem. Boom, right there. Bottom of the cone just goes out of my sight. And if I kind of stretch myself up, I can still see it, but even normal seating posture, I can see the whole thing. So that's right where we're gonna leave the RZR. All right, so now we're jumping in the Honda Talon, and we're gonna do the exact same thing. So we're gonna fire this up, drop it into low gear, pull up until the cone goes out of sight over the hood. All right, I can still see the whole cone, no problem. Still see it, no problem. Boom, whoa, overshot a little. We got to back up so I can see the whole thing. All right, almost the whole thing, whoop, right there. All right. So we're gonna leave the Talon right here because I can see the whole cone. I can just loosen the bottom, and if I stretch up, I can see the whole thing. So this is about the same spot I was on the RZR. All right, so now we're jumping in the KRX. We're gonna shift this one to low, start up the engine, and we're gonna creep up until that cone just drops out of our line of sight over the driver's side fender here. All right, so I can still see the whole cone, and whoop, just losing it right there. So I gotta actually come back just a skosh right there. Boom, just losing the bottom of the cone. If I stretch up, I can see the whole thing, but pretty much in line with what we did on the other machines as well. So we tried to make this demonstration kind of head-to-head, and what you see is that the RZR's closest to the cone, has the best sight line over the hood, and the Kawai's the furthest away. So there's a little bump on the fender that kind of obstructs your vision a little bit and makes it so you can't get as close to be able to see what you're looking at. All right, so again, remember, we've been comparing the all-new RZR XP against the Kawasaki KRX and the Honda Talon. Am I a RZR guy? Absolutely. Am I a little biased? Probably. But there's things I like about each of these machines. You know, the technology, the all-new interior, the seats on the RZR are fantastic. Ergonomics, great. When I get over to the Talon, you know, I do like the seats on that thing. The ergonomics package is actually pretty decent. Some of the tech on there, with the configuration of vehicles, a little different. but it's fun to play around with. Now, there are times where it's maybe not as good, and we'll show you those in a future episode. On the Kawasaki, you know, cool new gauge behind the steering wheel, a little clunky to use, don't really love that. But the low-speed drivability of that machine is really nice, especially when you drop it down to that low power mode. So cool things about each of these. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for future episodes where we'll actually be driving and getting into some more details on these competitive units.